Here's a super simple guide on how to plant a flag on Minmus for the first time and safely return. Let's start by building out our rocket. After choosing our command pod, we want to add a parachute and heat shield so we can safely return, but optionally, we can remove some of the ablator from the heat shield since we don't need it all. Now let's build our lander. To do this, we're going to add a decoupler, a basic fuel tank, optionally add an SAS module, and a small engine of your choice. I think the Terrier is more than powerful enough for Minmus. Now on the sides, we want to add some landing legs. Technically, these are optional due to the low gravity, but having some lightweight legs will help us stay upright on the surface. Lastly, we want to add some small static solar panels on the sides, but just like that, our lander is ready. Now let's build out our core launcher stage. This should get us most of the way to Minmus. To do this, we'll add 2 longer fuel tanks and a swivel engine. We could make this longer, but instead, I'm going to attach 4 boosters to the sides, which also use the swivel engines. We can also add some fuel lines from these outside boosters to the core stage for improved efficiency. Lastly, we want to add some fins to the bottom of the launcher for stability, but just like that, we're ready to launch. Now, I'm going to assume you already know how to put a rocket into circular orbit, but if you don't, check out my video on the topic. Once we get to a low Kerbal orbit, we want to set Minmus as our target in the map view. When we do this, you should notice 2 new icons appear on our orbit, AN and DN, which stand for ascending node and descending node respectively. You might also see that there is a long line that passes through these markers, all the way out to Minmus's orbit. We now want to time warp until Minmus is between 45 and 90 degrees behind one of these lines. Once Minmus is in position, we can prepare our transfer orbit by setting up a maneuver node. We want to do this at the node opposite where we just took our degree measurements from. So here, because I measured Minmus's angle from the ascending node, I want to do my maneuver at the descending node. To do this, click the descending node and add a maneuver node. We now want to pull out the prograde indicator until our new orbit goes out to the same height as the orbit of Minmus, and ideally, we will get an encounter. We can now go ahead and complete our burn. Now as we approach Minmus, you may notice that we're coming in a little low. More specifically, we're going to pass over the South Pole instead of the equator. To fix this, we're going to time warp until we are roughly halfway to Minmus's orbit, and then point our rocket north and burn our engines just a little bit. We can now come in for our approach to Minmus. What we want to do here is burn retrograde as we approach our periapsis, and keep burning our engines until we have a bound orbit. Now comes the tricky part, the actual landing. To do this safely, I suggest landing on one of the lakes, as these are effectively flat, and their altitude is always 0. Once you've chosen a rough landing spot, you need to time warp until you are about to pass over the area. Then we can burn retrograde and check our trajectory in the map. Ideally, we want in our path to intersect the surface on a dark blue lake. We can now time warp down for our final approach. Once your altitude is 3,000 meters above the surface, I suggest burning your engines until your velocity is 0. This means you will no longer be moving horizontally, and we can begin our vertical descent. As we fall, we're going to pick up speed. It is important to try and keep our speed low to prevent crashing into the surface at high speed. My rule of thumb is to take your current altitude, divide by 100, and that should be your maximum speed during this descent. You should then touch down safely, where you can then get out and plant the flag. Once you've had enough fun playing in the low gravity, we are then going to return back to orbit. This works the same way as getting to orbit on Kerbal, only this time we can start our gravity turn much sooner. Just make sure not to hit any mountains. Once we are back in Minmus orbit, we need to work out how to return. To do this, we're going to zoom out and look at the orbit of Minmus. We want to point our rocket so that we are basically burning retrograde relative to this orbit. To do this, we're going to set up a maneuver node that burns prograde, but we position it so that it flings us backwards relative to Minmus. Once we've done this, we just need to fine-tune and make sure our periapsis is less than 50 kilometers. Before we re-enter the atmosphere, we can also burn up the rest of our fuel to slow us down. If we do this correctly, our capsule should re-enter smoothly, our parachute should deploy, and our Kerbal lives to fly another day.